Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Focus Target podcast. You may not recognize me. I am indeed your captain, Captain Smiley, here with us today for the Focus Target podcast with Shy and Van. Sorry, gentlemen, I'm clean shaven for the first time in what seems like a long time. I don't know if you guys have ever seen me clean shaven.
I don't know.
I try not to be because I feel like my face looks like I don't even want to talk about what it looks like. It's not pretty. If you're watching on the video, I'm sorry. But today is the first day of the playoffs for the Avalanche, so I figured I'd start a playoff beard. It's something I used to do when I was younger, back when the Avs made the playoffs a lot, back in like the aughts and the 90s. 90s I couldn't quite grow a beard because I was still in high school, but like in the aughts I definitely did every year. And then the last couple of years, I've just already had a beard, so I've kind of been out of the habit, and maybe that's the problem, right? So I'm gonna do my part for the team this year. I shaved today. We're gonna see how it goes. So
You wouldn't
sorry.
be a good hockey fan if you didn't have superstitions that you lived by.
I'm not very superstitious person in general, but we'll talk about why this season maybe means a little bit more to me for a number of reasons as the podcast goes
How many
on.
numbers?
About 10,000 reasons. So anyway, before we get into that, maybe you had an inkling, but we're gonna do an NHL end of season report. The regular season's over. Seattle and Vegas did not make the playoffs, unfortunately. So
Spoiler.
Wait, what?
oh no,
Seattle didn't make the playoffs?
you guys haven't been following your teams, huh? You just checked out back in
They
March.
were so close.
Well, some of them were. One was.
And I
One
thought
was.
Vegas was a shoe-in, so I'm sure we're there. That can't be right. Your reporting is false.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a little bit of playoff preview, see if these guys who don't have a horse in the race are going to be checked into the playoffs at all or not. But we'll get to that later. First, we have a question of the day. Today's question of the day is, last week we talked about the Matrix Resurrections and our thoughts about that. We kind of had mixed opinions about it. So let's say they decide to make a Matrix 5 or an additional Matrix movie of some sort. If you were going to pay to go see a Matrix movie in the theater, what would it have to bring to you? What would you want from it to feel like it was worth to go see? Because I feel like both of you were fairly disappointed with Matrix Resurrections, and I feel like Van, you haven't really been like that big on the series in general, maybe since the first one. So I'm curious, like, what could if they came out with a preview today for Matrix 5, what does it have to deliver to you to make you actually be like, oh, hey, wow, I'm interested in that. I want to go see it. I'm gonna start with Shy.
I think I'm trying to think of a couple things. So one thing, no Keanu Reeves, no Carrie Fisher. Is that her name?
Carrie Ann Moss.
I couldn't
Carrie
forget who it is.
Fisher's
Princess
Leia.
Leia, right? I always get them swapped.
She's also
Carrie Ann
she's
Moss.
also passed away. So
Yeah. But no Neo and Trinity. I would want a new story. We kind of talked about this last week.
Mhm.
I would want, and I guess I don't know. I feel like I'd want good fight choreography, since that in my mind has been a key part of the series.
And like, what do you have a preference on, like, kind of where the story would go if it doesn't involve kind of the main cast? Are you looking for like maybe prequel earlier stuff that maybe explains stuff, or like just new kind of concurrent?
I think new concurrent, or even pushing forward, maybe in a world where Neo and Trinity are like doing stuff, but you don't see them.
Right.
I don't like, honestly, most of the time I don't like prequel stuff. I feel like oftentimes it is I'm like, I want to know where the story is going. Like, I guess if the story had wrapped up well, maybe I'd be more interested in prequel stuff, but I feel like they didn't wrap it up. So
would you be okay with, like, if like Keanu Reeves had like a cameo, if he like showed up like very briefly and like made it like he's around doing
He
stuff,
flew across the sky.
Yeah, or like
no. Carrie Ann Moss flies across the sky and she's like holding Neo, like carrying him like a purse or something.
And all she says is bye. She just goes bye. Carries on.
All right. What about? Oh, sorry. What about you, Van? What would get you to the theater? Is there anything that get you to the theaters for Matrix 5?
Yeah. If you guys said, "Hey, Van, you need to watch this because we're doing a podcast on it,"
Right.
that would get me into the theaters to watch it. So
okay, fair enough. Is there anything
outside of that? There's not much.
Really?
But if I were to go, yeah, definitely not the theaters. Like I'm doing straight to DVD on this one. I think I would want. Oh God, it seems so cheesy and so cliche, but like to have a nice, pretty bow after 5 episodes or 5 movies about where the hell we ended up with this battle that we started in episode 1 with man versus machine. Whether it's they lived happily ever after in a perfect symbiotic relationship, or hey, turns out the machines are much smarter than humans and they won. We're all back in our pods and nobody can ever figure out what's going on again. I don't know, just something wrapped up to
So if
make
they
it
gave
clear and
you,
concise.
so if they gave you like, if they came out and they said, the questions will be answered, the battle
Yeah,
will be settled, the
the movie
final
you've all
Matrix,
been
the
waiting for. Yeah,
final
explain
chapter in the
every.
Matrix
Yeah,
saga, that might
yeah,
make you say, okay, like let's see how they decide to close this,
sure.
and maybe they close some loopholes, make some things make sense, retcon some stuff potentially,
Yep,
right? Okay,
yep.
I,
I'll bite. I'll bite.
I'm I'm with that. I'm kind of. It sounds like Shy's not. Shy's
And then
shaking.
it
No,
ends
I think
saying
you're
like we will
assuming.
never make another one ever again.
I
Like
I think those are all red flags. All those statements. That means the opposite. If they start saying stuff like that, it means they're wrapping nothing up, and there's gonna be like a 3-part final movie. Like, I don't.
that's true.
I think fans
Maybe it's a
smarter
final
than that.
series.
I think.
Maybe it's an
Ooh.
episode 1 of the final series.
Ooh.
Wrapping everything up.
We've got a whole kind of 18 film Marvel cinematic universe finale planned, and we'll get you to Endgame of Matrix, but there's a couple movies on the way. Uh,
Dear God.
so So to answer the question for myself, it wouldn't take much because I love the Matrix. I think all three of the original movies I've really come to enjoy a lot more even than I did originally. And I didn't have maybe some of the same qualms that you guys did with the fourth one. There were definitely some pieces of it that I found objectionable, but as a whole, I enjoyed the movie. And I mean, I watched it twice. I'd probably watch it again. Like, probably I'll own it one day. I'll probably pick it up on DVD at some point just to add to my collection. So pretty much I would see a Matrix 5 regardless of what it was about. Although it's funny, what I would want would be more Neo Trinity and like main story and main cast. If they said, "Here's another tale from the Matrix," I would be less interested in that significantly. Especially if it was like part of that. Like, I know you, Shy, were a little more
Oh,
intrigued.
the
Like
freaking
the
cyberpunk kids.
yeah, with the crew with what was her name? She had a
Bugs?
weird name.
Was it
Ray.
Bugs.
Bugs?
No,
Yeah.
I keep
bugs.
wanting to
Yeah.
say rabbit because
I
of
want to say
Bugs
Ray.
Bunny. Because of Bugs Bunny, I think. Not
Ray.
rabbit, Bugs. Ray. That's a different
What if they
treat.
brought back like Switch and Dozer and stuff?
Like zombies? Like
No,
horde mode?
apparently you can bring back anybody at any time for any
Brought
reason.
back, yeah, I mean, Neo and Trinity came back. That'd be interesting, like the original Matrix crew. Again, to
Yeah.
time travel. I don't know. That would be interesting to me, probably. Yeah, I would be all right with that. But what I wanted from this one was, there was a lot of theories going around, and they never really addressed, right? Like Shy and Van, we had talked about this in the episode 3 podcast that we did. That like, there's that weird stuff where like Neo is like using Matrix powers in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's never really explained. It's like, "Oh, well, you were able to take it from one world to another," but that doesn't make sense. Like, taking it from one computer system to another makes sense. Taking it from a computer to the real world, like, I can't reach into my computer and pull out Final Fantasy 11 powers. Like like now I can provoke, like that's just not that doesn't make any sense in the context of what they're saying is the real world. So there were a lot of theories going about that I really found interesting was that like the real world was actually just another level of the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
That like what better way to safeguard your thing than like make people who think they've woken up actually they're just waking up into like Matrix initiation 2 instead of initiation 3 and like almost like a inception
Inception.
type of like levels of the Matrix, like how many times you have to wake up before you actually get to what's real. I thought they could have like looked into that, or at least if they'd have given us more, it's like why can Neo do these things in the real world that he shouldn't be able to? I thought there was some juice there, and you could make a very interesting kind of, again, kind of like one of those like mind bending, like whoa, like type of movies that they didn't go anywhere near. And so, like, if they did a fifth Matrix, I think that would be cool. If they kind of delved into like the meta Matrix a little bit, but
So I think
I just watch
yeah.
anything.
I think
Go
that's
ahead.
too much for a fifth movie.
It
This
probably is.
is the more
That's
you talk
another
about this,
real-
the more I'm on board with an MCU, a Matrix Cinematic Universe. I think that you could have. All right, I got to pitch this to you guys now. All right, we're talking about like maybe a 5 to 6 film series. You bring back Neo. You get a director. You get a well-respected director like Denis Villeneuve or
James
like
Cameron.
I mean, I don't know, James Cameron. I mean, I don't know, like whatever. Don't whatever. So you get a decent director to come in, and so right, so Neo is like he's who knows, maybe he and Trinity are heading out. Maybe there's tragedy. Maybe Trinity's somehow gone, and Neo's maybe like a washed up one or something, right? And there's like a young prospect. You get a charismatic young actor. Get what is his name? The kid who does everything nowadays. The Spider-Man. I can't think of his name.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Don't get him. That was a joke.
He's dating Zendaya. I know Zendaya.
Like in IRL, are they really a couple IRL? Never mind.
Yeah,
I think so.
We're way off track. We're way off track. So,
right,
so this young prospect, this prospective young man is like talented in Matrixology.
Zendaya dater.
And so the movie, like the first movie, is all about basically Neo training him, and also like us learning about this, like how like Matrix, they're discovering that the Matrix is actually levels, and then you basically have a series of movies that basically deal with the fact that now these got like this human faction is trying to like basically ascend through these levels of the Matrix and find out what is reality, and just like being, I would be on board with that. I think that would give them like this, like it would give a cool sense of purpose to the series that even Fighting the Machines didn't quite feel like it had to a certain extent.
And we really kind of get into some philosophy that like we've talked about, like what is reality?
Yeah.
Like at what level does it not matter whether it's real or not? Because like, like how different will it be to be if you finally get through all the matrices and get to the real world, how different is it from the original Matrix you were in, right? Like those are interesting questions that I think be fun to discuss. But
yeah,
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, of course.
I keep thinking Hiddleston, but like that's that other guy.
That's Loki.
Yeah.
Tom Hiddleston is Loki. Yes.
Yeah.
Both good actors. If they made Tom Hiddleston into the Matrix, like I love that guy. He's hilarious.
He'd be a good like agent. I feel like he'd make a great like kind of wisecracking agent.
Yeah, I'm with that. All right.
I think they need to bring Obi-Wan in.
I mean, come on, you gotta love Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor's just awesome.
Yeah, all right with it.
When is that show coming out? Do you guys know? Is that like sometime in the next couple months?
It's May. It's
this month.
May something. I forget.
There's definitely going to be a podcast about Obi-Wan at some point.
Absolutely. Well, we can maybe compile all the fake trailers and then the real trailer.
I was gonna say, was Obi-Wan the one where got like
how long ago was that?
Fake trailer.
I was like, did you guys see the trailer? Let's talk about it in our podcast. He was like, oh yeah, and then one of who realized like that was just a fake trailer, but
May 27.
I've gotten fooled by a couple of those in the past, like kind of recently. It really annoys me. Like a lot of these freaking, clickbait articles like make it seem like it's a real thing,
and then the bottom corner says like fan made in a watermark, and like you can barely even tell.
Makes me very angry. But
May 27.
May 27th, so end of the month. So all right, we got a podcast topic coming up. All right. Anything else on the Matrix before we get to the NHL? I'm chomping at the bit to talk hockey.
Can we stop talking about the Matrix?
Yes, we can right now. If you have, except for one thing, if you, our listenees, have ideas about what you'd like to see in a Matrix 5 or other Matrix pieces, what do you think of Shai's Matrix MCU, the alternate MCU, the Matrix Cinematic Universe? I love it. I think that'd be awesome. I'd totally get into that. Let us know what you think. We'll have our contact information after the show. All right, let's get into the NHL. Should we do a quick season recap for each of our teams, and then we can talk about the playoffs? I'm really dying to talk about the playoffs, but let's focus on the past first, right? Let's start. Yeah. I'll start. Mine will be quick because we'll talk about the Avs more, I'm sure, in the go forward. They did finish first in the Western Conference. They did not win the President's Trophy, which was kind of by design. They rested a bunch of their players. They did not play inspired hockey. They were really kind of conserving energy down the stretch. They made it clear they weren't interested in the President's Cup race. And so they finished, I think, second in the league overall. They play Nashville in the first round, which we could also talk about a little bit later because I thought the way the season ended was really kind of hilarious with some really crazy stuff on the last couple of days. But overall, I was playing Nashville in the playoffs. So their season, the regular season's done, the postseason's just beginning, and for the Avs, after getting knocked out in the second round for 3 years in a row, and the first round the year before that, everybody's basically said like the regular season doesn't really matter. Like it's a team that's going to be judged on how they do in the playoffs. Can they get out of the second round? Can they challenge for a cup? So um, the real work starts now for the Avalanche. Let's go to Vegas. Van, season in review. What
So,
do you think?
quick recap.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, are we going nuts on Vegas? Like, have we taken time
Whatever.
to discuss all things Vegas? Or are we doing a quick recap and then circling back around? Like, what's the format going on here?
Let's go deep into it. Let's give Vegas its time. Let's give Vegas the spotlight here. Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, you sure you don't want to go Kraken first, and then we can go to Vegas, because Vegas
Okay,
is a lot meatier. I feel like.
Okay, fair enough.
We all have stuff to. I don't know. I don't want to steal Van's thunder, but I feel like that's a better ending.
My thunder's already
Part of
stolen.
the topic.
We'll give Van a chance to organize his thoughts about the grand topic that is Las Vegas.
Because I've got questions for Van.
Organized.
I've got questions for that Van.
All
right.
I've got questions for that Van.
Indeed. All right, let's go with the Kraken then. Give us
all right. I'll just give a quick update because there's not much to share. Like it was the Kraken's expansion season, and I have a lot to thank to Vegas for giving people way too high expectations for the Kraken, which were not met. For those who don't know, Vegas went to the Stanley Cup playoff. They actually went to the Stanley Cup final, for their very first year as a team, through some crazy negotiations and just fortunate trades and dealing and whatever. And so it seems like the Kraken dealt with the after effects of that, where basically during the leading up to the expansion draft and leading up to the start of the season, basically our GM wasn't able to make very little deals with people to get any really good players. And so we had a rough season. I think we ended below 500, though the last third of the season was a lot better than how the season started out. So that gives some promise. And honestly, one of the best things about the season has been near the end, we actually got our the number 2 draft pick that we drafted in this last year's draft, Matty Beniers from Michigan. He came up and he signed his entry-level contract, and we burned his first year. And he looked really good. I think I forget how many games he played, but I think it was 9 points out of 10 games or something. So basically he's already a point a game player in his first 10 games or so. And whether or not that's going to continue, I don't know, but he was looking really good. And so now it's just up to them as far as the offseason, what they're going to do, who they're going to sign, who they're going to keep, if they're going to try to go out and get a couple other players to shore up the team roster. But yeah, that's it.
You finished third from last, so you've got the third best odds for the lottery, which is nice. So I mean, and regardless, I think this year you can't drop more than 2 spots. So they'll be drafting somewhere in the top 5, which is usually all you're usually nothing's guaranteed in the draft, right? But usually you can get a pretty solid player from there. So they'll have somebody young to add, hopefully.
And I think they were able to maintain a lot of their fans too, which is cool. When they won their their second to last game was at home, and they got a win. And apparently, the arena was just wild. People just loved it, and I think people have really stuck through them for the first season. So hopefully, they can perform a little bit better next year and kind of maintain those fans. But
what do you think was the the biggest part holding them back, or was it literally everything? Defense, offense, goaltending. Management decisions, which I don't even know how much input managers actually have in a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I personally don't hold anything against the leadership of the team, for Ron Francis, the GM, or Dave Haxel, the coach. I know that a lot of fans blame both of them, and maybe some of that's merited. I don't know. I know that Dave Haxel maybe doesn't have the most impressive coaching record, so a lot of people are already fans are calling for him to be let go. And I don't know. I mean, I don't hold either of those. I think. So, does every team do exit interviews with their players, recorded exit interviews, and post them online? I don't know if you guys follow this stuff.
I think so.
And maybe you guys don't follow it, but I've been following the Seattle.
Tomorrow.
All right, because I've been following the Seattle Kraken channel. And they've been posting just these 8 to 10 minute, basically almost every player and the leadership get to basically just record a little press debrief at the end of the season, talking about what they thought. They ask questions.
Oh, right.
And so I've been watching some of those, and I thought Grubauer's was interesting because they were asking him about kind of how the season shifted. They started off so bad and how it started improving near the end, and he made an interesting comment. And whether it's an excuse, I don't know, but he talked about the fact that an expansion team coming into the COVID era. He's at the beginning of the season, we didn't want to do anything together because we just didn't know if we'd all get COVID, and we didn't know if it would shut the team down. So we were all new to playing together, and we also couldn't do social activities. That he's when you
Like
join
no
a
team
team,
bonding events.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the term he uses, team bonding. He's like, normally when you join a team or when a team's starting out, you need that kind of stuff so you get to know the other players. He's like, we didn't have any of those connections. So I think he was like, as the season went on, we started forming those bonds just by playing with each other and practicing and stuff. And so I think that's what he attributed to being better. So I don't know if that was a big component. We know that the goaltending was really shaky at the beginning. Like Grubauer in the first half of the season looked horrible, and I think Drieger didn't look that much better. But yeah,
It's
I mean, yeah,
it's an interesting call out because it's one of the real key differences between Seattle and Vegas as well is that it was a tragedy. But you remember there was that shooting in Vegas right at the beginning of the season during the preseason, right, right like down the street from where they play, and like I feel like the team and the community all kind of rallied around that, and like I think they did, like they also kind of had that like they talked about how like the Vegas that year were like the misfits and like kind of, oh, we're all the players that none of our teams wanted. Well, we're gonna, shove it in their faces kind of thing. Like they really did like bond in such a cohesive way. And that was such a big thing. Like they didn't have any real superstars on that team. Like Marchessault was probably their best player. And like Carlson had a great year. But like they really played as a team and like they had a very team hockey mentality and like so much of it was their chemistry was why they found that success the first year. So, I mean, I feel like Grubauer does have a fair point. Like, I didn't really think about the COVID impact
yeah,
that could happen on team. That's a good point.
yeah.
So
So
maybe this question is because I'm an absolute hockey rookie, but
Rook.
Grubauer, from what I know, is a good goalie. And yet, if I'm reading these numbers correctly, he gave up, well, not him, but the Kraken gave up 285 goals against on their
that
standings.
sounds right. Yeah,
And
probably.
that seems to be like third highest in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So my question is this. And I guess it's really towards Smiley or Shy if you want to chime in. How much impact on goals allow do the players have, not just the goalie itself? And it seems like it would be substantial.
It's huge. Yeah, it absolutely is huge. And like but the problem I think in Seattle was like they didn't have a bad defense. If you look at their defensive numbers, they weren't great. They weren't like elite, but like they finished most of their defensive metrics kind of middle of the pack. Like they weren't like their goaltending was near the bottom. Their defense was on like comparatively was better than that. And like they have a lot of good defensive players. Like they like that's what everyone said coming into the season was the defense was kind of the strength of their team, and they would be a team that maybe struggled to score, but had good defensive players and had
Right.
what we thought were two decent goalies. And like we thought their problem would be like, could they win? When the games got really high scoring, would they be able to come up with the offense? But like that they could keep it like 1-1, 2-2, like they'd be in a lot of games. And it seemed like the goaltending didn't really do that. What do you think? I mean, you were kind of grimacing, and you're closer to the
Well,
team than I am, but
yeah, I think because I think the perspective you brought was a lot of the word on like when after the expansion draft that was basically the word, right? Was like
yeah,
they drafted defensively. These guys are gonna be a gritty defensive, like thrive in low scoring games. But I don't, and maybe you're right. I'm still not as familiar with a lot of the stats in the game. Like I'm slowly learning this. Like I just learned kind of more what plus and minus meant the other day. Like I don't still fully understand that, but I think I have a better idea. And like
just to clarify for our fans maybe listening, plus minus is the number of when you're on the ice, regardless of whether you're involved in the play. If you're on the ice when a goal is scored, it's a plus. If you're on the ice when the goal is scored against you, it's a minus. So it's the net of that, but it excludes any odd man situation.
yeah,
So
power play stuff. Yeah,
power play, penalty kill,
yeah.
anything like that, that doesn't count for or against you. So it's basically at 5-on-5, your goal plus minus while you're on the ice.
Cool. All right. So I just realized that the other day I was listening to a podcast and they referenced it.
Mhm.
I'm like, I've been
Yep.
wondering what that is all along. But no, I don't think their defense did as well as was expected and as it looked on paper. And I think the more you watch them play and the more I've like listened to like people like some of the media people who follow specifically the Kraken, like the different like podcasts and like experts in Seattle, they've been very disappointed with the defensive effort as well. So I think it's not in response to the van. It's definitely not just the goalie, but it'd be interesting hearing like a lot of games where they would talk specifically about like Grubauer gave up 4 goals this game, but like 2 of those he was left out. Like he was facing a 2 or 3 man rush basically,
or something.
and like at that point, like he didn't really stand a lot of chance. Or it's just weird. Like hockey, and I'm probably like every sport is all about. It just feels like it's all about like momentum. So they'll even talk about like a goalie making a clutch save and that like firing up the team, and like I don't know. Just another quick thing too, and maybe this would be worth talk. I don't know. One last thing. Sorry, this is taken. Why did Van? You should have gone first. This took a lot longer. You guys shouldn't have asked me any questions. But I think it's worth talking too about
a podcast to talk about hockey.
Yeah,
I think we're okay, Shy.
Yeah, I think something else worth mentioning is one of our biggest players that we took in the expansion draft was Mark Giordano, and he was our first captain. And then we traded him away at the trade deadline to the Maple Leafs. So I don't think we reassigned a captain. So we just haven't had a captain for the last few weeks.
It's not uncommon.
So there's a lot of speculation about who the captain will be, and there's kind of, I think, among some of the local media, there's kind of a favorite. And I don't know, especially Smile, I'd be interested in your take on this, but Yanni Gourde is kind of the name that I keep hearing people talk about. And I don't know, like, yeah, they gave away their Kraken Awards at the last home game, like 2 games ago, and he actually got the fan favorite award. And I don't know, like I think that'd be cool. He's like one of, if there's like 3 or 4 players that like I've been kind of like trying to like narrow down my list of like the first jersey I want to buy. He's definitely one of them. Like he's someone who always feels like he's like giving 110%. He's like it just seems like he's been a really fit for the team and the city as far as like wanting to like plug into this new team and like make a difference. And
well, I mean, he came from Tampa Bay, won a cup with them. I mean, he's got Stanley Cup caliber experience. He's been like. There's something to be said for bringing a guy who's been part of a winning culture, who's not. I mean, like a good example, maybe we'll get to here in a minute, is Jack Hughes, right? Who is that? Is that who I'm talking about?
Jack Eichel.
Jack Eichel. I got Jack Hughes. Sorry, Jack Hughes.
Is it Jack?
Yeah, it's Jack.
It's Jack Eichel. All right, now it's your Eichel.
Sorry, Eichel. Like. Great player, right? But like he spent his whole career in Buffalo. Buffalo hasn't had a winning season since he's been there. Like there's a difference between a player who's good and a guy who's come from a locker room that's had success. And I mean, the Tampa Bay, probably one of the most well-respected like clubs here over the last handful of years. They've been great every year. Even the years they didn't win the cup, they were a contender to win it. So I mean, I think that makes sense. See, I thought that they were going to go with the new kid, Matt. Beniers, because I think that's kind of a popular move these days to put the C on is this, and maybe I don't know if they think of him this way, but is this guy going to be your superstar? Are you thinking?
Oh yeah,
I think
that is the face of
your franchise.
Yeah,
they did that in Colorado with Landeskog, who was the youngest captain when he was appointed. They did that with Sidney Crosby before that, who was at the time the youngest captain. And they just did that in Minnesota with Kirill Kaprizov, who's their young second-year stud player who is just like really great. And they gave him the captain and said, you're the future. We think you're the future and you're going to be the one to lead this team. So that's who I thought that you were going to say. But I think
those people
makes sense.
Were any of those people in their rookie season though? Because I mean, it'll be his rookie season next season.
Not Kaprizov. It was his second year, I think. But Landeskog and Sidney Crosby both were. And like they were both, again, like they were very high draft picks. This was at a time when both clubs were in a similar position to the Kraken, right? When they were kind of at their low point, starting to ramp up where they didn't maybe have, it's kind of more of a look to the future. It's like, we know you're probably not ready even to be the captain, but like, we're not ready to win a Stanley Cup yet. Right. Like, and maybe in a couple of years when we're in a better place, you'll grow into it. And it's worked. It's worked from a lot of people I've seen. But again, I don't think Yanni Gourde would be a bad call either.
Enough about the Kraken.
All right. Let's talk about Vegas.
All right. So this is going to be a therapy session for me.
Yeah. That's what we're here for, buddy. Let's hear it.
Because this was painful. This was a painful season. Like to have a team with so much potential that anybody who was a betting man at the beginning of the season said, look, this team's going to the playoffs, undoubtedly, no matter what.
I think almost everybody had Avalanche Vegas as a rematch in the third round this year.
Right.
Like coming into the season, that was like, you'd have to really look to find somebody who said otherwise.
Yeah, right. So starting off was actually pretty damn strong. We led the Pacific Division for a few months. And then we started getting marred in injury, which is typical for most teams. But this was an atypical type of injury lineup for the Golden Knights. And that's probably what you're going to hear mostly talked about when people talk about the recap of this year of the Golden Knights, was just that it was absolutely marred in injury. And again, I know every team goes through injuries. I've been a sports fan forever. Injuries happen in baseball and football and all those things. This was an exception. It was absolutely outrageous what I've seen. They were saying that it was, I think somebody estimated 508 man games lost to injury. So 508 man games lost to injury, which is absolutely bizarre. So they did have their struggles, right? They were never strong on power plays. They were last in power plays for I can't remember how many months. And then they struggled with salary caps, which kept them from putting up their best people on the league at all times. But the injuries in that way kind of helped them because they could put them on LTIR, which you're not hit against your injury cap. And whether it was right or wrong or hokey or whatnot, I know putting Mark Stone on long-term injury reserve towards the end of the season when we were going to activate Jack Eichel was kind of poo-pooed by the hockey fans, saying that it was just intentionally to get under cap so that we could start playing Eichel.
Can I say something about that really quickly? About the Mark
Yeah, of
Stone
course.
issue? Because what I've heard, and I haven't watched a lot of EGK games, but what I've heard from other podcasters is that, because didn't they have to reactivate him near the end because they were
Yes.
worried they weren't going to make. And I've heard people say that that it was obvious he was not playing well, and that so I think that probably dispelled a lot of the rumors about the LTIR thing, that it wasn't just hokey, it was.
I think
legitimate.
he went 8 back without scoring a single goal, and I mean that's not Mark Stone at all. So he still wasn't coming back strong, and that's a good point that he genuinely was injured. I mean, who's going to put their captain out on LTIR when you're in the home stretch trying to make the playoffs at this point? Like, you just don't do that intentionally. Like, yes, you're activating Eichel, but he hasn't been on the team ever, right? He was signed back in, what was it, December?
Well, so that's kind of where I will push back a little bit. Like, not to say that Stone wasn't really injured, because I think, to your point, there's evidence for that. But I think the reason that people kind of made a bigger deal about it is when they signed Jack Eichel, they the math didn't work, right?
Right.
They were basically buying something they knew they couldn't afford. And so when you do something like that, I think it opens up the door to say, well, how are they going to do this? Oh, how convenient, this person happens to be injured. If he gets better soon enough, is he still going to be hurt? They kind of invited those kind of questions and comments based on their actions. In my opinion, and whether or not a guy was really hurt, I think their cap, and I want to go on the record here, because I feel like a lot of people demonize the Golden Knights for kind of playing cap games. A lot of people demonized the Lightning last year
Right.
for what they did, and I understand that, but this is an NHL issue, right? This is a loophole. Everybody knows
Yeah,
about it.
they're
The
going to play
Lightning
it.
clearly
Right.
exploited it last year. So if you don't like it, if you don't think it's right, the NHL should change it. It's very easy to close this loophole. I can think of 5 different ways to do it off the top of my head, right? If it's in the rules, the teams play by the rules. You can't get mad at a team for doing what the rules allow them to do. That's a problem with the NHL. It's not the Golden Knights' fault for trying to do the best
And the
they could with
Lightning,
what
they
they have.
literally were overcapped
Oh my God.
until the first game of the playoffs, and then where the salary cap doesn't apply, and then all of a sudden everybody's back and right.
And Kucherov didn't just it wasn't a Mark Stone situation, right? He didn't come back and limp through his first couple games. He came back and lit it up. He scored he had 4 points in the first game of the playoffs and tore it up the whole rest of the way. He was one of the leading scorers. I think he won the freaking Conn Smythe that year. It's but again, it's not the Lightning's fault.
Hold on. Let me finish the recap, and then let's go back to points and talk about stuff. So anyway, so there are Martin injury. We had late season injuries as well with our number 1 goalie and then our number 2 goalie. We had to throw in, and I do want to talk about Logan Thompson. We had to bring in Logan Thompson, who was the American goalie of the year last year, to play in professional hockey down the stretch. And again, if we have time, I'll get into him. But ultimately, all of that wasn't enough to keep the Golden Knights in contention. And they ultimately fell out. I think it was with 3 games left in the season. They were outmatched. They weren't going to catch the Kings, which was the third spot for the Pacific Division. So they were relying on the Stars to lose. The Stars ended up just doing good stuff, and they just got too far away. So the Golden Knights missed out by, I think it was 4 points by the end of the season to making it to the
Yeah.
playoffs.
But
So
I mean, it's always hard to say because once you're eliminated, like
right.
the last
So,
the
but if
last
you think about it, like
it's
I think it's 5 points actually. 5 points. Like, what is that? 2 wins and an overtime
two and a
loss?
half games. Yep, 2.5
I mean,
games.
that's nothing in
Yeah,
82
close.
games.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so where do you want to take it? I mean, do you want to talk
I
about, I
saw.
can go into
It
injuries,
sounds like Shy's got
salary
something.
cap.
Yeah.
I
No.
wanted to
Yeah.
chip in on the injury stuff real fast because I pulled up some numbers.
Let's touch on the salary cap really quickly because I don't know. I know we just talked a little bit about it. Maybe we could just tie a bow on that once we get all our
Sure,
thoughts
let's
out.
do
Because
that. Yeah.
I just wanted to. I agree with Smiley. Obviously, like if you're playing a competitive game with millions, if not billions of dollars on the line, like these owners are wealthy and there's betting and all this stuff, like, and you're gonna take every advantage you can. So you can't really hold it against the coaches. You can't hold it against the team. But apparently, I think it was the owners. Was it the? It was either the owners or the GMs met like a few months ago to talk about the salary cap issue, and apparently they tabled it. Like they didn't make a decision. So like obviously like at that level, either it's not a big enough concern or there were other, who knows, like maybe there's other
Well, we
considerations
tried to off
behind
Dodonov,
the
right,
scenes.
to get closer within cap. And how well did that work?
But
He
I
had a
think
no trade to Anaheim clause, and somehow they missed it. The lawyers missed it when they were talking about the trade.
so. The reason I think that they probably aren't going to change this rule is because it is hard to take advantage of, and there are inherent risks, and you see that.
Yeah.
Vegas is kind of proof for them on the other side to say, "Hey, if you want to try to play salary cap games, okay, do so at your own risk because if then you need people down the stretch and you run into salary cap issues and you can't field a full team or you can't activate a guy off of injury
Yep.
because and put him in
Yep.
your lineup, you pay the price." And so like I think that's probably why that they tabled it because they're like, what happened with the Lightning is like, was it an exploit? Probably yes, but like it was kind of a perfect storm type of thing. And it wasn't like they just like deactivated Kucherov right before the trade deadline so they could pick up somebody else. Like his surgery was from the off season. Like he was out the entire year. So it wasn't like they just like tried to pull a fast one at the last minute. Like it just kind of was like my guess is when they talked about it, they said, this was an aberration. Like most teams could not manufacture this. And if they tried to, you could, you look at the Golden Knights this year as a warning to teams that want to take that kind of risk. So
Yeah. And somebody, and I read an interesting article, and they were basically making that exact point, saying, "Hey, look, the Golden Knights knew what they have. They tried to gamble by putting by going over the cap and putting people on LTIR. And yes, they had, most of them were significant injuries, but this was like the way they wanted to play this year, and it just didn't pay out for them." And I'm
okay.
like, yeah, you can't argue that. They knew what they were getting into, like 100% knew what they were getting into. And I just didn't think that they knew how substantial the injuries were going to be, who they were going to be, and how long they were going to be. And that part just bit him in the ass. I mean, when you have Mark Stone out for so long, I mean, the names of people who were out long term: Mark Stone, Alec Martinez, Max Pacioretty, the number 1 scorer from last year, Riley Smith, Robin Leonard, your number 1 goaltender. And it goes out on February. He's not the same. He tries to come back in April. He can't do crap, so they pull him. He goes. Then it's a season-ending injury. They bring in Brossoit. He goes out on a season-ending injury, and you have to rely on Logan Thompson from the American League Hockey
So
League.
did you have that figure for how many man games lost for the Golden
500. Oh, 508. 508. Sorry,
508? So
is
to
what
put in
they're estimating.
perspective, I was able to look at mangameslost.com, which has that NHL injury data, and just to kind of give a range to put into perspective where that is. The team that had the most this year was Montreal with 731,
Good
but
lord.
second place was Arizona with 627, which is a lot closer. So
Yeah,
definitely
but
near
how
the
did they
top.
do?
Like you're looking at the two. You're looking at the
one,
last
two, and
two
three.
teams.
Yeah,
Right.
1, 2, and one of the two teams that finished below the Kraken,
Below
right?
the
Where they're both-
Kraken. Yeah.
On the other side of it, the teams that lost the fewest, Calgary's only lost 92 man games
Look where
all
they're at.
year,
Yeah.
and Minnesota 175.
Yep.
So definitely
Yep.
on the front, and that's also can be misleading because that's just man games. It doesn't tell you
Right.
whether it's a fourth liner or a first liner. To
Yeah.
your point, the list of names, like those are all of your great players, and like
Right.
you still
All
have
first
good
line,
players,
yeah.
but like I saw it with the Avs this year. Like we kind of were pretty banged up from time to time, not significantly, but like when you lose guys like Landeskog and McKinnon and Makar and Taves, like
Yep.
our record with Devon Taves not in the lineup is like it's bad. It's like 5-9. And when he's in the lineup, it's like 50-9. It's insane. Like sometimes one guy can really make a difference, especially if they're an impact player like that. And of course, in hockey, if you lose your starting goaltender, all bets are kind of off. Like that could be the only injury you have, and it can derail your season.
Sure.
Can we shift the conversation just to talk about Robin Lehner briefly? I don't know if have you guys followed some of the dialogue about like the end of the season between him and Pete DeBoer and the fact that like
there's been a lot of weird stuff there.
And it's weird, like, because I don't at a certain level, I feel like the media is just looking for something to blow out of proportion potentially, like, and try to make a scandal out of.
I don't know,
but I don't know, like, because I've heard two different takes of it. Like, I think the popular take right now on social media and like just in general is the fact that Robin Lehner was injured. He had told apparently the team doctor had said he needs to have a surgery. He's like, I'm gonna want to have surgery. I'm out for the season. And then due to salary cap concerns, Pete DeBoer said, no, we need you to back up as a backup goalie the specific game. And he didn't have to play, but by putting him in that spot, if Logan Thompson had been injured or whatever, then Robin Lehner would have had to come in and play injured. Like that's I think the popular
and it's bizarre because like Pete DeBoer. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, no, and I just want to just really quickly the other side is that I've also heard someone say, and I don't think not to belittle anyone or anything, but the fact that like Robin Lehner has been injured for some time. Like it's not like he was freshly injured and Pete DeBoer is like, oh, despite this brand new injury that you're dealing with, you have to back up. Like Robin Lehner has been playing injured, so it could have been potentially like could you play one more game? I don't know that Robin Lehner has really come out, and maybe that's where I'm maybe a little more ignorant. I don't know if he's really spoken to this as far as what happened, but I don't know. I just if it's the first one, that does seem. I mean, it seems pretty crappy. But
I think it probably is the first one because even Pete DeBoer retracted his statement and I can't remember his exact words, but he's like, oh well, when I said Robin Lehner was healthy. That was really the wrong term to use. Like I should have, and I'm like, okay,
that's what I was gonna say is that like he was on record saying no, he's healthy, he's ready to go, but it was like we kind of find out that no, he wasn't, and he said he wasn't. But so I've got a question for Van. Do you think Pete DeBoer will come back next year as the head coach, and do you think he should?
I think he's under contract to come back.
Right.
For what it's worth. Yeah, I think I like Pete DeBoer. I actually do like him. I'm the Robin Lehner thing was kind of weird, but I do like how it's hard to judge just based off of how he managed the team during injury and all that stuff. And I know we keep coming back to injuries, and I do want to we're running out of time quick, which is crazy.
I know.
But I do want to say
I still want to get to.
One of the shining, so I'll wrap this up quickly then. Yes, I think he should come back. Yes, I want to give him a healthy team to come back and do again, because we've seen what he's done with a good team, and the team that he has right now is stronger than it was last year when they went to the playoffs. And I think they could have done so much better, and I think next year's team is going to be just as strong as this year's team. They got to figure out how they're going to get under cap, though. But
yeah, they're already over cap, I think. Like
going about like 10 million or something. Yeah, like crazy.
Right. Well, get rid of Brossoit and have Logan Thompson be your backup. Well, I don't even think Brossoit's in for that much, anyways. But anyway, I don't think that would do it. But so the shining star out of all these injuries is that people had to step up, and you saw some awesome plays from Waugh to Marchessault to Stevenson. Like you had all of these people who people knew were good, like really shine, while everybody else is under injury. And it just gives you more hope on the second line and third line and going down the road that you got strong people in this team, not just Mark Stone, not just Max Pacioretty, not just Pietrangelo and all them, but you have other people who can help you carry this team into victory, who are really shining stars. And I think it sets them up for more success next year, which I thought was really cool that they were able to highlight with all the big juggernauts out of their, being in their shadows. The last thing I want to say is kudos to Logan Thompson for stepping up. He looks like just a solid NHL goalie. And that's good for him to come in and be thrown in the mix. I think he played 16 games or something like that. And yeah, he was shaky at times, but ultimately, carrying the weight of playoff pressure and everything on your rookie year, your 16th game and whatnot, he did an outstanding job for the Golden Knights, and I just want to give him kudos, man. So that's it. That's it for the Golden Knights. We're going to come back next year. We're going to be stronger. I think Pete DeBoer deserves an extra chance, and we just need to stay healthy.
It's always hard to ding a coach too much when they lose so many key parts. I mean, I think, Avs have gone through that a couple times where it's like, can you really blame a coach when they're missing this guy, this guy, this guy, that guy? Like, that's not the team he was given. You
Yeah.
sometimes that's not their fault. On the other hand, I feel like Pete DeBoer to me he's one of those coaches I feel like who's a lot better in the regular season maybe than the postseason, which it's not always the coach's fault for that. But like he was in San Jose for a long time with a lot of those good teams that perennial contenders, perennial top of the league, couldn't get past the second or third round, and it's hard to do. It's not always the coach's fault, but like I interested. I interested. I mean, you follow that team a lot closer than I do, so I'll kind of take your word for it that if you want to see him back, that's an endorsement. I'll also say something Shai brought up about how the Kraken didn't maybe get to. I know I call them the Kraken. It's just the way I've always said that word. I know officially they're the Kraken, so I'm not trying to demean anybody over there. Um, we've had this conversation many times between the three of us. But anyway, something he brought up about how they didn't have an opportunity to really gel and get cohesive potentially and build that up. I think there's some same could really be said for the Golden Knights. I mean, they brought in
100%.
so many people in, people out, and then with injuries, like I remember that very famously there was an Avs team that was like full of Hall of Famers. They brought in Paul Kariya and Teemu Solani to play with Forsberg and Sakic and Hayduk, and it was like this is an all-star team by itself. Like they could send their whole team to the all-star game and it would be complete. And like they were all injured at different times of the year. I think they played like 5 or 6 games the whole year as a like fully healthy group. And they got bumped in the playoffs in the second round. Like they never found that time to come
Yeah, well,
together
you're mixing lines, right? So people are playing with different people all the time,
all the
and you
time.
can't
Yeah.
get that gel. And that's
Yeah.
exactly one of
Yeah.
the big things that happened this year.
And
100%.
as Shai says, so much is about momentum. Like hockey, unlike so many other sports, is so much about momentum and chemistry and that kind of thing. Like really plays a bigger part
Yeah.
than I think in like some other sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is also something that happened with the Kraken was Dave Haxtell switched lines up like every night. That's actually, now that you mention it, that is one of the reasons the fans are really pissed off at him, is like that was kind of frustrating. So hopefully next year we see more consistency there. But Smile, I wanted to, like, based on what Van was saying about like just seeing the depth of the Golden Knights, I think that you could probably attest to that even with the Avalanche, because I remember early on the Avalanche had a couple people step up, and I'm thinking specifically, was it Kadri? Like, didn't you guys had a couple players who just haven't? Is that right? Wasn't Kadri having like an amazing year like the first half of the season? Or
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
So you guys saw some of that,
scorer.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
like you guys saw some players really step up when you were dealing with injuries and
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to see. Sometimes there's players who kind of get buried, especially when you have a very talented team like the Golden Knights and the Avalanche both do. When you've got guys on their top, like eating up mad minutes, because like you want your Pacioretty's and your Mark Stones
Right.
playing the whole game. You got guys on the second and third line who just don't get as much playing time, and sometimes
Yeah.
like just moving up in the lineup, playing with better wingers or centermen, having a little bit like putting to more high pressure situations in the game and saying, hey, usually I'm on the bench here in the last minute, but now they want me to go out and win it. And some guys like kind of shine in that situation in a way that they don't playing third line minutes, and other guys don't. Other guys kind of shrink from it. So it is a kind of a cool way to see what you've got. Okay, I need to turn this conversation to the actual playoffs, the thing that still matters this year in the
Oh,
NHL.
Wow.
Um,
All right, should we just go play some Lost
yeah,
Ark?
Yeah,
I'll
Lost
just
Ark?
yeah.
I'll just monologue for the next 15 minutes. No problem. Um, so my first question is: Are both your guys' teams are out of the playoffs?
Mhm.
How much of the postseason do you plan to watch? How engaged do you plan to be? Because I know in the past for me with the Avalanche, and the Avalanche, as good as they are now, went through about a decade of missing the playoffs. Um, I was always still very excited to watch the NHL playoffs because, like, there's always teams to root for because there's teams that you hate. There's always teams to root against, and like the quality of play is just so amazing that
Oh,
like
it's
I
so
always just
awesome.
get into it no matter what. But like I also get that when you're so invested in a team, and especially in like Vegas' case when they fall short, and like you're like our team should have been there. Like we were good enough to be part of this, and we're not. Like it can be hard to watch, and like it can be very disappointing. Like for me, like when the Avs go out whenever they go out, like usually I take a dip and it's hard for me to really like be as into it as I was before. So I'll start with whoever wants to start. I don't care. I can pick someone if you want, but like
But Shay.
Shy, how much of the postseason are you planning to watch? How
Yeah.
and if you are going to watch, who are you kind of focusing on, if
Yeah.
anybody?
So I think you asked me this the other day, and I think I gave you the
Okay.
answer you weren't expecting because I was like, I'm not that excited. But I think it's funny because it pretty much changed yesterday. Like I got home from work yesterday, I'm like, oh, what's happening? Oh yeah, the playoffs start tonight. And I was looking at the matchup, and I'm like, oh, Tampa Bay and Toronto are playing in a first round. Like I knew that was happening, but I guess it hadn't really sunk in that like a matchup like that was happening. And then I mean,
Did you get to watch any of that game?
no. So let's get into that. Like, because now my consideration is how am I going to watch the playoffs? Because how I've been watching hockey all season has been ESPN Plus because I have the package with Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu, and you can watch a lot of live games with ESPN Plus. However, it appears that all of the playoff games are on cable, and so therefore are not being played on ESPN Plus. So I went to tune in last night, and it's like this is on ESPN2 or something. I'm like, well, now what? So I may have tried to tune in another way, but I don't know that that's how I want to tune into all of the games. So I need to. What I want to do tonight is I might try to see if anyone if there's any like Stanley Cup playoff like streaming packages I can find. Like,
yeah,
I'm hoping because I don't want to spend a ton of money to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs.
there has to be like out of market games you could watch. Like,
Yeah, and
I mean, all those games are nationally televised for the most part.
Right.
So like, it's not. I'd be shocked if there wasn't something.
Yeah. So last year is when I burned through all those trial membership. You guys remember? I did like YouTube TV trial to watch like the Stanley Cup playoffs for like a week and a half, and I went to like Fubo TV trial to like to watch another week or whatever, and that's how I got to see through the Stanley Cup series. But yeah, and as far as teams, I don't know. I'm, all right. So I am rooting for the Avs to a certain extent, Smiley, just because you're a fan, and none of our teams are in it right now, and I don't have Kraken don't have a rivalry with the Avs, so like I'm not against them making it far. I do hope. I don't know. I don't know a lot about the Florida Panthers, but it just seems like they've been playing really good hockey for a number of years now and have not been able to produce. And just like for their fan base, like I think it'd be awesome to see them to go deep into the playoffs.
Their team, I don't think they've ever won the cup. They've been there. I don't know that they've ever won it.
So I think it'd be awesome to see a Florida Avalanche like final. I think that'd be awesome in the Stanley Cup.
That's what I'm hoping for.
And then I don't know. I guess the third one, I don't know about specifically if I'm hoping for them, but I don't know. Like Toronto just feels like they've really been crapped on recently. Like they've had some good teams and they just don't do anything in the playoffs. So I guess I am low key. And then Mark Giordano went to them and he seemed like a pretty cool dude. So listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a
cool dude. All right, so my answer is going to be a lot shorter and a lot less interesting.
Just really quick to follow up on some for posterity here. Panthers have not won a cup. In fact, they have not won a playoff series since they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals in 1996 to Colorado Avalanche for their first time.
Dang, what a matchup would that be?
Yes,
oh,
and like,
revenge.
it would be I'm actually hoping for that as well. I'd like to see them. I think that'd be a fun final. Anyway, go ahead, Van.
So albeit we're intra-divisional, I will as well be supporting our co-host here in the Avalanche, and but the Kings as well. Just because I'm an LA native, and the Kings have been a part of my life for a while. So
let me ask you then: did you get to see any of that Kings Edmonton game last night? Because that's another one I want to bring up.
No,
you guys
I mean,
out.
Yeah, it looked like it was a good game.
Fantastic game, and I think just Edmonton, like the expectations are so high. They've got Connor McDavid. Like every year, it's like this year is going to be different, and for them to come out and lose that game, like I watched the end of that and I was just like shocked that they couldn't get it done. I think if the Kings upset Edmonton in that series, that would be.
So in full disclosure, I won't be going out of my way to catch any games, but when I hear that Avs are on or Kings are on, I'll probably tune into those games and watch them.
Nice. Yeah, you won't know what time they are.
But you're right. Playoff hockey is It's just a
just
different
so good.
animal, dude. It is so everybody's on 110%. I hate that term, but everybody's on 110% the whole time. Like it
Yeah,
never gets turned off.
it's
I love
wild.
it. Yeah.
It's
Well, they're
really
in it
crazy.
too. Yeah.
Last
They lost last night though.
yeah, that was a good game too. I every time the Wild lose,
It's a
make
good game.
brings me joy. As much as I actually want them to win the series, though, I want the Avs to play the Wild
Oh,
in the next
yeah.
round.
Oh. Ooh. Do you though? I mean,
I do.
yeah,
I
but
absolutely do.
that could either be
I've
I
amazing
mean,
I've
or
Flurry
it
said
could
beat
from the
Flurry
beginning.
beat
really,
you guys
really
last
piss you
year.
off.
I've said from the beginning. I've quoted on this podcast. Bring it on. Like bring on the best teams. I don't want the Avs to shirk. I don't want them to dodge anybody. Like let's do it. Let's win this cup like the right way, and not say,
We're
oh
rooting
well,
for you.
you guys didn't have to play such and such team, so you guys got like no, like give us the best teams, and we'll be. I don't want the asterisk that the Lightning had last year. That like oh Montreal
You're about to
wasn't
say
actually for
Dodgers.
real, right? No,
I know you're about
no,
to say.
I wasn't about to say the Dodgers. Did that happen to the Dodgers? I said, well, because like last year the Lightning had like the easiest path because of the weird divisions and the
Right.
way it
Oh,
went.
yeah, the bubble and all that
Like
crap.
yeah, and like I mean, look at
Yeah.
Montreal was the worst team in the league last year. And yeah, granted, we saw they had the injuries, but like they weren't really the second best team in the league, right? Like Vegas probably should have beat them. Avs probably could have beat them if they had gone. Like if yeah, like Montreal wouldn't even have been in the playoffs if they hadn't been in their own special Canadian division. So I don't need an asterisk like that. I shouldn't say that because I referenced this early in the show, and I'm not gonna tease you guys and not take you all the way, as they say. Um, so I've got a little extra riding on this season. So because I'm a fool, um, I
Fool of took.
when the Avalanche were about 10 games out, I did the math and I found that the chances of them not winning the Western Conference were very, very small. Like basically if they won like 25% of their games, even if their opponents who were chasing them won like 75% of their games, they would still make the number one slot. Like they basically had it in the bag. And like somebody on one of the podcasts I listened to says I should place a bet on that. And I was like, I should place a bet on that. Like I am supremely confident that they are going to win the Western Conference. Like I know they can do it. Um, and so I went out to a betting site and I took $10,000 with my wife's approval for the record, and I placed it on the Avs being the Western Conference winners, which I was very confident in. And I sat on the edge of my seat for the next 6 games where they won 5 in a row and basically locked it up. And I was like, this is free money. This is amazing. This is the best bet I ever made. Come to find out that the bet that I made, even though it doesn't say anything about the playoffs. It doesn't say anything about Western Conference Championship, but the bet of Western Conference winners was not to win the Western Conference, apparently. It was to win through the third round of the Western Conference finals and win the Western Conference that way. I think that's very misleading. I double checked and looked, and like there's nothing about like playoffs
Playoff,
or
yeah.
postseason.
Postseason, yeah.
It just says Western Conference winners, and to me, I feel like I've won that bet. Um, I may try to voice that opinion, but since the bet has not yet resolved, I feel like I'm trying to decide. Like Sarah kind of wants me to let it ride and see if the Avs can just win the bet the way they see it and make it through the third round and make it to Stanley Cup Finals. And I'm not sure if I want to do that. Like $10,000 is a lot of freaking money. Like I would never, ever have made that bet if I had thought it was through the playoffs. Like I just like that's insane. It's insane to
Yeah.
put that kind of. I
Yeah.
maybe would have put like $1,000 down and be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I did that." But like, I only put 10,000 because I was like so like the numbers, the math was so strong. Like, and now come to find out, and like I guess it's my fault, like for not realizing that like how could the odds be so favorable? Like
Right.
like like I shouldn't have gotten
It's
these
too good to
odds.
be true.
It's too good to be true.
It
It
probably
probably is,
is.
and it
Yeah.
was. It
Yeah.
absolutely was. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of in a dilemma. I'm probably gonna see how they play tonight, and maybe in game two. Like my goal is to make a decision before. Like I'm not gonna wait till they get eliminated and then try to fight it because I feel like that's kind of arguing in bad faith. But like as long as the bet's still active and they're still alive, I feel like I have legs to stand on. That maybe I could go back and say, hey, like even if you're not gonna give me a win here, like you should give me my freaking bet back because this is poorly labeled. But yeah. So I'm watching with a lot of interest, a lot more than even I thought possible. Um, and it's sad because like I'm just as happy like if they can get to the Stanley Cup, like that's a reward enough for me. I don't need a monetary incentive. Um, but yeah, fool of a smiley here.
Live and learn.
Making foolish decisions. All right. Well, so you guys didn't see the games last night. I did want to bring up if you have a chance, maybe watch the highlights of Tampa Bay Toronto. It was a 5-0 Toronto win, but there was a freaking brawl that broke out in the third period. It was
No
wild.
way.
People like it was hilarious and like it's definitely worth look up the highlights. It's worth watching because like they're all just like standing around holding each other with like kind of like pushing like a little pushing and shoving and then like it goes to commercial break and they come back and they're like well while we were gone things escalated and like a guy kind of came in and like everybody just starts tearing each other up like one dude has a big old cut on his face and there's blood all over the ice like it was wild and I was like wow
Which
this
game
is
was
gonna
that?
Toronto and
Oh,
Tampa
that was
Bay
the Lightning. Oh, gotcha. Lightning
yeah
and Maple Leafs. Okay,
Lightning
I'll
Maple
check it out.
Leafs like that's gonna be a hell of a series like I
Well, that
thought
sucks because it's game one of the series. And like, so now you're gonna take this bad blood throughout the whole series.
it's gonna
Oh man.
I think.
everybody oh go ahead Shai
I mean, it's not new bad blood. I don't think. I
it's
don't
not
think those teams. I don't.
Okay,
Yeah, I
fair
don't.
enough. Nope, you're right.
and
Yeah.
you know, this was kind of all the first round matchups. I think that game is the one that most people point at as like this was like a second round matchup. These are two really good teams. This is where people kind of complain about the NHL's playoff format because it puts two teams that are really that good head to head already. Like that, like Toronto has the third best record in the NHL this year. I guess is what I saw, um, and they're playing the two-time defending champion Lightning. Like that's rough.
Yeah.
So a lot of craziness. I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the playoffs. I'll be watching on the edge of my seat tonight for the Avalanche Nashville. I'm really disappointed. Like you guys totally stole my thunder in this one because like I had so much to say about the Avalanche Nashville matchup. I talked a bunch of shit on Twitter because there's a bunch of stuff going on that I felt strongly about, but we don't really have time to get into it. We're over time already. Super briefly, if you can just rattle them off without um, going into too much depth. Who are your 3 stars of the season for you, as far as like your 3 who played the best for you this year? Who would you give your 3 stars? I mean, Van, you kind of already talked about giving some shout outs. So like if you had to order it, first star, second star, third star, who do you got for Vegas? Go.
As awesome as okay, so Logan Thompson gets the notable mention. But I think it's gonna be Marchessault, Stevenson, and Waugh.
Okay. 1, 2, and 3 in that order.
Yep.
I'll-
No. Waugh, Stevenson, Marchessault. So the
Okay.
opposite order. Yeah.
I love Marchessault. I think he's a great player.
Yeah.
He's a guy who I would be happy if he ever came to Colorado.
Yeah.
Shai, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go Jared McCann, Yanni Gord, and then probably Matty Beniers. I think I got throw him an honorary one. Just how well he's played coming straight from college in limited time.
For me, number one's got to be Cale Makar. He like I hope he wins the Norris Trophy. He deserves it. Especially if he beats Yossi head to head in this series. Like, come on. Number 2, I gotta give it to Devon Taves because Devon Taves, like the Avs are just a different team when he's out there and playing his game. Like he's unheralded. He doesn't get the attention Makar does, but he might be our best defenseman. Like Makar is probably a better player, but I think Taves is a better defenseman. And then for 3, I will shout out Nazem Kadri. Kadri missed the entire series against the Golden Knights last year because he was suspended. I think that was a big difference maker, and he's been on his best behavior this year. Like he's really like played within the rules. He hasn't been as whiny. He Sorry about that. And he's been great. I guess he had like a wisdom tooth out the other day. Like so they're wondering if he's going to be like ready to play. Like weird stuff. But anyway, that's my 3 stars. Maybe I'll do like an out of focus pod with myself and put it on here just to talk a bunch of smack about Nashville. Like I'm bubbling over. But we're out of time. Any final thoughts?
I think that in 2 weeks we should do a recap of where the Avs have done. I don't think you need to do an out of focus pod.
There you go. Let's do that.
Do that
Our
as
listeners know what to tune in for.
We can do a quick recap because I don't want to just talk about hockey the whole time. Okay, if you, our listeners, have anything to say about the NHL playoffs, about the Matrix, or about the Focus Target podcast in general, we can be reached at the following places: on Twitter at Focus Target, where I will not be talking shit about things. I do that on my own personal account. On YouTube, Focus Target Podcast. That's where all of our videos are. Past videos, past episodes, side projects are all out there. We live stream these shows on Twitch, twitch.tv/Focus Target Podcast. And of course, the best place to reach the Focus Target Podcast is via email, focustargetpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you for being here. Thanks for talking some NHL with us on episode 113 of the Focus Target Podcast. I am your host, Captain Smiley, freshly shaven.
This is Shy.
And I'm Van. Cover us, Sporkins. We're out.